Good morning, and welcome to South Dade Shoutout. My name is Richard Candia. I'm a realtor with 𝑺𝒐𝒖𝒕𝒉, but I'm also a board member with the South Dade Chamber of Commerce. Every week we introduce to you a member of our South Dade Chamber community and share with you the story about their business, what makes them unique, and why they have chosen to do their business in South Dade. This week we are joined by Ana Llambias, a therapist with our friends over at Monarch Health, a center located in Homestead providing multi-specialty mental and health services. Ana practices a specific type of therapy and is studying to receive her doctorate in philosophy very, very soon. Welcome, Ana.
Thank you for having me here.
We need to talk louder, Ana.
Yes.
So talk to me. Monarch Health they're a very active member of our chamber. We got to meet Dr. Santiago a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Why did you join Monarch Health?
Well, I think...
Or did they make you join? How'd that happen?
They enticed me. I think they have a very beautiful system there. They have it's a family, essentially.
Yes.
They have a little bit of everything. And I think that's so necessary nowadays to be able to provide that to our community. You know, there's a place for children, there's a place for their parents, for adults, older adults, testing, therapy. And overall, I think they're really catering to the needs of the community, not only in services to English-speaking people, but also Spanish speakers, which we know is very necessary nowadays.
We'll put a pin on that.
Yes.
But something you said just raised my antenna. You said adults and older adults. What's the break? What's the line? Where's the line?
65.
Okay,
65 starts at older
so
adults.
Okay, all right, cool.
That tends to be the consensus.
But that's a special group, no? Because if we're gonna generalize, that's the group that is a little more resistant to these types of services. They don't want to talk to me about what's been your experience with that.
The older generation, especially when I think about our Latino population, Hispanics, they tend to be more against seeking psychotherapeutic treatment. There's a lot of stigma, right? Therapy is only for those who are crazy, for those who need it. You need to be institutionalized to get it. That tends to be more the older generations or grandparents. But nowadays, we're finding this great need to be able to cater to them and to normalize why coming to therapy is necessary. That it's, again, not only for those who are crazy, but also for people who just are going through life and they're going through adjustment changes and just need additional support.
I think as we lower that bar, we recognize that we could all use a little bit of a third person perspective, no?
Mm-hmm. A little extra support and self-understanding. I think that's the highlight of it all. It's never too late to learn a little bit more about yourself, right?
Okay. Your specific practice, what's the field that you're studying?
Clinical psychology with a special focus on psychodynamic psychotherapy.
Psychodynamic sounds very active. Talk to me about that type of therapy.
Well, this type of therapy, it's more on the clinical end of things, right? So we're more into the psychoanalysis, classical psychoanalysis specifically. What we are trying to do is autonomy. We want the person to learn about themselves as much as they possibly can. They want to be able to self-reflect, right? What we call the introspection. Mm-hmm. They want to just really focus on what's happened in the past, process all their events, their traumas, and then move forward with this greater understanding. The idea is at some point in their lives, for them to internalize the therapist, right? So that they can do that for themselves and not necessarily need us forever.
You actually, now by you saying that, I've kind of jumped forward in some of the questions I was going to ask you. Mm-hmm. Are there practices that someone can learn so that I could eventually do this on my own without the need of a guide?
There's a lot of self-help books, right? Okay. But not necessarily with this type of therapy. There's what we call the manualized treatment models and non-manualized. This tends to be more on the non-manualized. This requires a little bit more effort when it comes to the theoretical part from the therapist and is not as close-ended, right? When we think about other types of therapies, we think about close-ended, only maybe 10 to 13 sessions with that therapist, and then you achieve what you hope is that symptom alleviation, right? But for us, we work a little bit more with severe psychopathology. So personality disorders, individuals who have perhaps a very severe, very chronic depression, anxiety, and have comorbidities, other issues as well.
Okay, let's focus on the service that Monarch Health offers, and as a part of my health regimen. Okay, so I'm not court mandated. I'm going through things, and I decide I need to look for something, and I realize I have Monarch Health in my backyard. How do I get to you? How do I know that I need psychodynamic therapy? How does that process happen?
Well, Monarch has a filter, right? I like to think about it as a filter. It's the first line of defense. They go through this wonderful person that we have at Monarch who is going to do the intake interview, right? That screener. They're going to talk to that individual for about an hour or so, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more, and get a great understanding about why they are seeking services to begin with. This person is able to ask specific questions to lead the conversation to a place that they know whether to direct them to one specialist versus another. Depending on her decision, right, she will contact the other therapist and she will say, hey, look, this is what we have right now. What do you think? Do you think that they would be a great fit? Once they're paired up with us, from there, we also conduct, like the first session is also like an extension of that intake interview.
Okay.
And then we can decide if, yes, this is a really good fit. Up to this day, it has always been a good fit. So she tends to hit the nail on the head every time. So I think it's a great system, and I think a lot of places should definitely take note of that.
Or just do it yourself and keep Monarch at the front end of that service industry. Okay.
Exactly.
You're when why do they psychodynamic, is this something new, a new service that Monarch is offering, a new type of therapy, and you're the person?
At the current moment, yes, I am the only psychodynamic therapist, just because I like to call psychodynamic therapy, and a lot of people as well, they call it a dying art. Okay. Right. This is more of the, like I said, classical analysis. This is the Freudian way. Even
very
though there's
active.
Yes, exactly. Like,
back and forth.
Like it says, it very dynamic, right?
Sure.
So it tends to take more of that classical analysis approach, which is essentially the first type of therapy in modern science, right, and modern psychology. So with that being said, there's a lot of different schools of thought, different types of modality, different types of approaches to therapy. But this emerges from that initial one, from the beginning. It's
not knowing anything, and again, I'm the uneducated observer. That's the type of process I think would be more a conversation. I think that's what. But is there an age limit? Should someone be a certain age before they engage in this type of therapy?
Not necessarily. Psychodynamic therapy you can do with children as well. It incorporates more of the play therapy, right? It's a different way of communicating with kids, sometimes through the use of toys. How would this animal feel about this, right? Or what did you experience? Or if there's trauma, right? There's this idea that maybe the child was sexually abused, let's say. You can use the toy to be able to navigate that more easily. But again, it could be tailored to different ages.
And I guess it makes sense because I'm assuming there's a certain level of maturity by age, and that might not necessarily be true. Like, I'm not very good at talking about myself, and that's so really, I guess to your point, age really doesn't matter. But it seems like it'd be particularly good for an adult, if an adult that's open-minded and such.
That's correct, yes.
The demand in Homestead for this type, are you busy? I don't want to make a blanket statement about what's going on in Homestead, but
I am busy. Yes, I am quite busy. And I think that modern day technology, social media, has helped a lot, right, to destigmatize what is mental health. A lot of people now are becoming more aware about these different types of therapy. I know that many people don't even know, well, what's the difference between cognitive behavioral versus just behavioral therapy versus psychodynamic? Now, through social media and the access to the internet, they're able to tell the difference between one and the other. They want to come for help. They need that extra support. And yeah, we are quite busy. I think the community is very receptive to the services that we're providing. And again, Monarch does a very beautiful job at being able to cater to these different populations and their needs, essentially.
Agreed. What are the goals
In psychodynamic therapy?
for the therapist that's speaking with a client, patient? What are the goals? What are the benchmarks you're trying to achieve with the patient?
My goals as a therapist, first and foremost, everybody's going to have different goals, right, when it comes to therapy. Not everybody is going to have the same diagnoses, right? Sometimes we even see patients who don't even meet criteria to be diagnosed with a disorder. But they want to come in and work on themselves, get a greater understanding of who they are.
Is this a life coach?
That's not a life coach. Life coaches
sounds like a life coach.
Life coaches will be able to provide you with advice, right? In a way, like an agenda, a protocol. This is what I want you to work on this week. I want you to do this specifically. We don't do that. We want the person to be independent, to be autonomous, right? I couldn't get out of bed today, right? I haven't been able to get out of bed at all this week. I'm feeling very depressed. My job is to ask, well, what's preventing you from getting out of bed? What's happening that you want to stay in bed? A life coach would approach that differently, would say, well, this week, I want you to get out of bed at least 5 minutes a day, right? And I want you to go out there and get it. You know, it's very different. They have a place in, in our community. They have different populations would definitely benefit from that. But this goes a little bit more in depth, right? This is going to be able to help you process quite a bit. And life coaches are not, they don't have the credentials to be able to process trauma the way that we are.
Right. What's the ideal mindset for the therapy to be effective? And I'm generalizing, but because of conversations like this, I had shared with Dr. Santiago that my kids have helped me come to a point where we can talk about these things. The things are more open. So places like Monarch Health, I think, are benefiting from that global conversation. But still, the mindset. What's the mindset for a patient? What mindset should they be in order for the therapy to be effective?
Well, the ideal patient will be open and will not be resistant, right? There will be no guardedness. But that's not usually the case.
I'm here.
It's like, well, I want to be here, right? I want to work on myself, but I don't really want to tell you everything about me,
That's
right?
Yeah.
And that's our job. That's why we have those tools, right? We have the techniques to be able to guide the person to get to that point where the walls come down, the resistance disappears. That way we can work with them, right? Sometimes it takes some individuals longer than others. But again, there's no ideal patient. There's no such thing. If they came to us, it's for a reason.
Right. And homework? Do you give patients homework? Work on this, say this, mantras?
No homework.
No homework?
Not from the psychodynamic perspective. Other modalities will definitely give homework, worksheets and such, but we don't. Our only homework is think about what we talked about today, right? I want you to continue to process throughout the entire week, and you have to bring in the material. So next time you come in, you have to tell me what you want to talk about. It's very self-directed, patient-centered. We don't necessarily say, this is the agenda and this is what we covered today. No, it depends on you and what you're bringing into the session.
Not to cast aspersions on your colleagues, why is this a preferred methodology? And it really depends on the patient, so it's not really preferred. But in your mindset, your course of study, why is this a preferred methodology? I think we've touched on some aspects, but...
Well, it depends on what the person is looking for. If you're looking for very rapid symptom relief, right, symptom alleviation, then perhaps the CBT perspective, cognitive behavioral therapy, something that's more skills-based. We have sometimes patients who come in who want to do psychodynamic therapy, but they're not ready for that because they don't have very basic life skills. Oh,
so can I move through the spectrum? No, not spectrum. But can I move through the different types of services? I don't know. I need cognitive. I don't even know what that means, but I have one type of therapy, and then eventually go to you where there's more of a conversation. Some of the walls are down.
Sometimes we have patients who feel that they have gotten everything that they needed out of maybe cognitive behavioral therapy, and they want to move into the more psychodynamic because they're ready to do that deeper work, right?
Right.
Other individuals will probably never get there. And that's okay because sometimes they benefit from just CBT. And that's great. Again, there's a place for every type of modality depending on the person and depending on the severe psychopathology that they may have, right? The severity of that. So it's just important to take note of that and understand that, yes, for me, psychodynamic makes sense, right? I think about my patients, I think about their life, I conceptualize from a psychodynamic standpoint, but that doesn't take away from the fact that other therapists are doing a beautiful job out there with different modalities as well.
And it helps to view this as part of your overall wellness, wellness program. So I eat right, I do some exercise, I do this, and I take care of that.
Exactly.
Let's talk about our community then. South Dade, and that's the community we're talking about. We did in our State of South Dade event we had last week. Couple of things that we always mention. If you look at South Dade, south of Kendall, that's 600,000 people. It's 25% of the county's population, and in some ways we're a little bit underserved. What's your perspective on mental health and the state of South Dade? How does it? Where are the shortcomings?
There's a scarcity, first and foremost, Spanish speaking, right? Bilingual providers. Even though we would assume South Florida, right, that we would have bilingual providers, that's not necessarily the case. I think majority of our universities and our colleges are including people who tend to come from out of state. They tend to be more of the Caucasian background or just monolingual. They don't necessarily have that cultural sensitivity a lot of the times, so that competence to deal with different populations. I mean, South Florida is a melting pot, right? We have individuals from everywhere. That's what makes us so rich, so makes us so interesting. And a lot of these other clinicians may not necessarily know because they may have never been exposed to it.
So a scarcity of therapists overall, and a subset, even more of a scarcity of
bilingual, culturally competent, exactly.
How is Monarch Health helping to address this shortcoming?
We have a very diverse group of individuals who are working there. Individuals who can do therapy in English and Spanish. We don't only do therapy, we do testing as well, right? We work with the parents, we work with the children, we work with families, with individuals, right, on an individual basis. We work with couples. So we really try to cater, right? Monarch really tries to cater to everyone who needs it. It's a very holistic center, very holistic environment, right? There's a place for every single person that comes in.
How far away from how far away are your patients coming?
Well, a lot of our patients are technology, telehealth, right? So they can be in different parts of the state. And we have providers who only actually provide therapy via telehealth. We have providers who don't come into the office ever, but they're able to see patients from far away. And I think that's wonderful. I have many patients myself. It's more of a hybrid. I see many in person and I see many via telehealth. It facilitates the whole process and it actually allows them to go into session. Otherwise, they may not be able to. Maybe in their areas, they don't necessarily have the availability of providers to be able to service them. And we're able to do that.
Don't tell Dr. Santiago that I forgot about the telehealth thing.
It's okay. I covered it.
God. But still, from a geographic sense, though, they're coming from everywhere.
From everywhere, within, remember, the bounds of the licensure, right? So a lot of times outside of the state of Florida, many providers are not able to give services. It depends if they are licensed in other states.
This is another generalism, but I'm impressed by the level of services that Monarch Health is offering in Homestead. And if you accept a notion where that Homestead doesn't have certain things that they might have in a downtown or whatever, downtown Miami or whatever, it's pretty incredible. It's laudable that you are bringing that level of service to the community.
Yes.
Have you received any type of referrals from practitioners of other fields of medicine?
From Monarch Health?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they tend to be either self-referred or somebody else refers them. I go to Nova Southeastern University where I'm completing my doctorate there. And not long ago, I was telling Dr. Santiago and her husband, Yadel, that we actually have a list of, providers who are able to give services to students at the university. They're on the list.
Ah, no kidding.
Right? And that's for Lauderdale.
Wow.
So, and they're in Homestead. So that's how far they're reaching. And people know about them because the word of mouth, right? And not only that, but online and the testimonials and what people are saying, the feedback that they're giving. Hey, look, I'm talking to this therapist. Things are going fantastic. I think you should, go in and maybe you can talk to somebody else.
And that conversation's happening more and more. Again, we talk about lowering the bar, people being a little more open to that. That is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I get that conversation a lot, and I don't know if there's somebody's trying to give me a message.
Just something.
Yeah, hey.
Science.
Science. If you were to generalize, I'm using that word a lot. What type of work do you think, teachers, police, firefighters, postal workers? I mean, if you were to just manufacturers, salespeople, what field probably should engage more with mental health therapy?
Our first responders would definitely benefit. And
I love that you had an answer for that.
It's the first responders, right? They see quite a bit on the field. And I think that any additional support that they may receive, it's fantastic. I think their department does a very good job of providing services in-house, but sometimes that could really influence their openness to actually seeking services. Well, what if I share a little bit too much, right, in my in-house services here at the police department? What's going to happen? And that's where somebody else, right, let's call it a third party like us, could come in and provide those services. Right. I myself have worked with many individuals from a military background, right? They have in-house services,
sure,
right? But at the same time, I do hear that quite a bit. I don't feel too comfortable opening up here. And I think that's understandable. That's something that we need to really listen to and reflect on so that we're able to give them what they really need.
Can you remind me the location? Where's the address for Monarch Health?
Monarch Health is in Homestead. I don't know the specific address. I am bad with directions.
Okay, I'll get that in a second. The last thing then,
Mm-hmm.
long-term goals for Monarch and long-term goals for yourself.
I don't want to speak for Monarch, but I think it's to be able to grow continuously and to continue to expand our services, right? To reach even more people, to continue the mission that they have right now, which, I mean, I love it there, right? I'm very happy there. To this point, in every single environment that I have worked in, I haven't really found a team as complete as they have at Monarch. And for myself, well, looking forward to graduation, finally.
When is that?
2024. So one more year. I'm off to my internship year now, which is like our clinical, like residencies.
Sure.
Right. And then after that, postdoctorate, which is one more year. And then I will be done, hopefully, forever.
Doctorate in psychology? No, it's never done forever.
It's never done. Yes, we are forever students. And I'm okay with that because there's something new to learn every single day. Ourselves, humans evolve constantly and we need to evolve with it. And so do our practices and our ability to continue to cater to the community.
For the potential patient that might be watching this, and let's say I've got an issue that I need to address, mm-hmm. and I decide, okay, I'm going to go to Monarch Health. I'm going to look up and find some help. So we do the initial mm-hmm. kind of thing. Is there such a thing as going back for touch-ups? Is there or is it a consistent plan of you're in my life forever? How does that work?
So, on average, intake interview, you get paired up with your clinician, mm-hmm. you start the work. Mostly, we see individuals once a week. There are some people who need to come in twice a week. So it's usually just 1 hour, 15 minutes to an hour session. And if they need more, depending on the severity, sometimes we have like what we call emergency sessions.
Right.
We'll do that. Once the person feels that they have reached their goals, right? That they're at a point where I don't necessarily feel like I need to come in every single week anymore. We can start to space out the frequency of the sessions every other week, once a month. And that's what we call maintenance, right? Sometimes there are some patients who feel that they have graduated, right, from therapy.
I keep on asking that question.
We'll
right?
say that.
No?
Yeah, well, they graduated because they've met their goals. Problems are always going to happen, right? We're always going to have difficulties in our life. We're always going to perhaps feel a bit down, a bit anxious. That's bound to happen, but they're going to have those tools already. So maybe they'll come in 2-3 times a year just for a booster. Okay. Those are what we call a booster. Maintenance would be once a month, and then a booster is every now and then I just want to check in with you.
Okay.
I want to see where I'm at, see how I'm feeling about myself and what I've been doing.
I like that. In other words, so we don't create a dependency, but you're a tool, more of a tool than a dependency kind of
Dependency
thing.
is never the goal in therapy.
I think that'd be
never the
counterproductive.
Exactly.
We're trying to get you off of that. Let's be clear.
Yes, no dependency here.
And the question is, do people come up to you, make the appointment, and then they're just, I don't want to, they don't talk. They don't bear, they don't participate.
Yes, that tends to happen more often than not, right? People are quite resistant, quite guarded. I want help, but I don't want all the help, right? I want to share with you, but I don't want to share everything about myself with you, right? We have people who are not aware that that's what's even happening, that guardedness, that resistance. They're not even sure.
Well, I have a friend where it would sound like you're kind of, every bad thing I've thought about myself now is true. Is that a path? And I don't want to hear that.
Yeah. So a lot of times,
I want you to tell me it's somebody else's fault.
A lot of times we ask a question. I don't know. Well, is it that you don't know, or is it that you don't want to know? Or is it that perhaps getting that answer would be very difficult for you, right? To process. But that's what we're there for. We're there to walk them through that, to provide validation, to reaffirm them, for support, right? To just give them the space to know that they can open up and nobody's going to judge them. Nobody's going to say anything bad or abandon them, right? Because that's happened in the past too for a lot of people.
Right.
So we are, for many, many individuals, we're the first person in their lives that's actually there to listen, to be non-judgmental, and to provide that support. And
we talked about how psychodynamic is a much more engaged. So you're an active listener.
Yes.
And it's kind of like back when we were in the old days, when you go to confession, you'd go to confession. I don't know if you're Catholic. You go to confession, and there was like a wall, and you're like, thank God, I don't want the priest to see me, even though he totally knows who you are.
Yes.
Right? But then as things are like, I would rather sit down with the priest face to face and like, hey man, this is what I did. But I know that they're paying attention. They're not just whatever, right?
Well, in classical analysis, that's how it used to be, right? Freud used to do that at the beginning. The couch. You used to just lay down on the couch. We have a couch, but now you sit and you face us.
Oh, no. Well,
yes.
Good, Pat.
Yeah. Every now and then, no. I personally think that takes away from the active listening part. If I'm sitting down here and I'm jotting notes as you're speaking to me, how would that make you feel? Right? It's like, well, she's not really listening. And what are you writing? What are you writing about me?
So you don't write anything?
I don't. So after the session, what I do is I have my own notepad, like my own journal, that is just for my patients. Everything's identified, right? Just their initials, time of the session, so that I know who I'm talking about. And then I write everything that went through the session, that happened in the session for myself, to be able to follow up, right? We have so many people, so many stories, so many different narratives, right? So I want to be able to be present. I am able, thankfully, you come back in next week and be like, well, so how was Samantha? Yeah. And how was Josh? And did your friend so-and-so, so we're able to follow with everyone's stories. Thanks to that.
Sounds subjective.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it sounds like, so do you interpret things that I say? Or what if I think, and maybe I'm limited in my vocabulary, because I'm talking about feelings which I've never talked about before. And so I'm trying to convey A, but you're totally hearing it as C and like, oh, this is a classical C. I don't know. I'm not saying that. How do you overcome those kind of things?
So we have clarification, right? Let me just clarify. Let me just check in with you to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. And then we have interpretation. That doesn't happen right off the bat. You have to have seen this person for a while, be able to understand their patterns, right? Once that happens, you can sort of throw that interpretation out there and see if it makes sense to them, if it resonates with them, if they accept it. Sometimes they don't, and that's okay, because that's part of that conversation. At the end of the day, we are people too, right? And we make mistakes.
Sure.
And that's something that's important to talk about, right? A lot of our patients tend to think, oh, you have all the answers, you know everything. No, that's not the case, and that's the beauty of this, that if I'm wrong, you should be able to tell me. And that allows them to do that with other people in their lives as well.
Anna, thank you very much. It was a real pleasure speaking to you and learning more about what your role is specifically. But again, the just gem and resource that Monarch Health is for our community, but thanks to telehealth too.
Yes, that too.
Remember that. Anyways, thank you very much for spending some time with us today. We always hope that this is of value to you and it helps demonstrate just how rich our South Dade community is in talent and services and makes it just a wonderful place to live, work, play, and thrive. My name is Richard Candia. Hope to see you next